Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It's G here. I am sequestered to my bedroom for no apparent reason. Well, actually because my partner has been working on this project that's taking over the front room, and I usually have been doing these outside, having a walk, and sometimes I can't do it because my kid be tripping. And he just trip. And so anyway, and my selfie stick broke. I just been having one of those weeks where everything is just not working in my direction. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about raising biracial, multi-ethnic children in a primarily white environment. So guys, subscribe to my channel and let's have a little chat. So look what I'm doing. I'm teaching myself how to crochet, and a friend of mine is having a baby. So I'm making a baby blanket. You guys gotta tell me, what do you think? Anyway, it's my first project, so I'm actually kind of proud of it. It's not perfect, but it's coming along. Anyway, I was thinking about this for a couple reasons. This week was something they have, apparently not all of Italy, I was corrected, but in some of the schools in Italy, they do this thing called madrelingua, where people with the kids who have parents who are, I guess, of a different culture, and their mother tongue is another language other than Italian, they come in, they read the kids some books or whatever. And so I participated in that this week. So the books, however, that I chose were not just like, I don't know, Dr. Seuss or whatever. I decided to read something that was a little more culturally aware, even though some of the kids probably didn't understand. I read like a kid's book about Prince because I love Prince. Anyway, so it got me to thinking though, because I was also watching, oh my God, this movie called The Strays. It's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, it's kind of interesting, and it has like some twists that I totally was not expecting. I think I'm gonna talk about it a little bit on my TikTok. So if you're not following me on TikTok, go over there and follow me. I do a lot of different types of conversations on there. So, but anyway, like these things have got me, were like making me think about sharing some of my thoughts on raising biracial children, multicultural children, multi-ethnic children in a society that's primarily white. So, you know, if you don't know, if you're new to me, I live in Italy, and Italy is not multicultural at all. It is basically just white Italian folks is the primary thing, and they are not that interested in multiculturalism, if I'm honest, as a society in general. So raising children here who are not white can be challenging. Actually, my 5-year-old who does go to school, the 3-year-old has not started yet, but my 5-year-old has given indications already at like this little age that he is seeing, experiencing things that affect him because he's in a primarily white world. And so far, you know, it's like little things. Like he was like, oh, we're in the bathroom, and I was like detangling his hair, and he was like, "Mommy, I want my hair like this." And I honestly did not understand. I thought he meant bald. So I was like, kind of like, no, Grandpa. And he was like, I want hair, but I want hair like he said his friend Mateo. And I was just like, straight hair? He was like, yes, I want straight hair. And I was like, oh, but this is a house of curly haired people, because even though their father is white, he has curly hair too. So that was able to kind of diffuse it. Like, this house curly hair. Everybody in this house has curly hair. So it's one of those things where you start to see these little signals that they feel like, oh, my differences are making something. I feel something about my differences, right? So, like, I was having a discussion with a friend of mine who's here, who's African, who has children who are also biracial. And their perspective was more like, well, I need them to celebrate both sides. And, and I'm like, celebrate? I don't know. And I guess celebrate's not the right word, but in some instances, yes, you can be biracial. That can be your personal identity. However, I do feel like based on your phenotype, the world's going to treat you differently. And out of respect, if you're biracial and you're phenotypically ambiguous or white presenting or whatever, you have to take that in perspective into your identity as well. And my children who are phenotypically Black, even if they are fairer skinned, here colorism and everything, like, you don't get that ideal. Like, for me, colorism is something that Black people, outside of like the system, socially, it doesn't make a difference in many respects here. And so in America, we have a whole different perspective on colorism and being fair, like all of those like things like that. People see my children, they see two little Black kids, they do not look at them and think they are biracial, period. And even when they're out with their dad, people will ask them, even though their face looks just like their father, they are not white. So people ask their dad, like, oh, like, where did you get them? Questions like that. So they're already hearing that, understanding that people think that they look different. So I say all that to say my perspective on raising my children in this world and trying to make sure they feel secure, make sure that they understand that, yeah, people here might treat them a certain way because of their physical appearance. In some ways, I would say my 5-year-old is already seeing or feeling certain things that he has not necessarily expressed in the same words, but he will just be like, Mom, I'm brown like you, right? And I'm like, yeah, babes, you're brown like mommy, and brown is beautiful. Like those reinforcing ideas for him. I also make sure that I share books and things that have a broad spectrum of people and experiences and energies, staying connected with my friends in the States, because in the States, my friend group, my life was very, very multi-ethnic, multicultural, like everything. And that's not standard, even in the United States, if we're honest. Like, most people do not have close friends of different ethnicities in general. And I definitely do. And I still talk to most of them, and they talk to my kids. And so when I am able to take them to the States, they're exposed to so many different people and, everybody's auntie. So it's just like having that for me makes a huge difference. In addition to the fact that I do have an older son who is phenotypically also Black. So them being connected to him and having like my brother and all of these people in their lives is really important to me as well. And, even a lot of times I have seen when Black people have white partners, and not just Black people, but people of color have white partners, they try their best to assimilate as much as they can into whiteness. And I personally, like, that's not my jam. Not really interested in doing that sort of thing. And I think that's where a lot of times the disconnect for the children start to happen. And maybe those parents think that it's easier, it would be easier for them. But the truth is, what they are spreading is like internalized racism. Because if you're not teaching your children to have like that love of themselves, then this world is not teaching them to love themselves as little brown babies, you know? So it has to be reinforced at home. It cannot be like the parent of color pretending that these things don't exist and basically invalidating their children's experience, even though they know that it's real. And so, like, this is something for me, like, I would say that people with this attitude shouldn't have children. If you want to pretend you're white and assimilate into a white world as a person of color, that is your choice. Don't have children and fuck them up. Like, that's just my opinion. And I mean, sometimes I think people aren't conscious of that. And sometimes maybe they really, I mean, I have my own opinions of when I've seen people of color who desire to have, like, you know, children who are biracial and what that looks like for them when they have like those internalized issues of colorism, of, you know, a little bit of self hate, and they seek that sort of thing out. Like, I feel like that's a whole different thing, and those people should not have children who are biracial or multi-ethnic, because they themselves are not prepared to face what these children might face. And I guess maybe their hope is that they would have white presenting or racially ambiguous children, and they think that would help pass, but you're still doing the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter. I think then it's a whole different learning process for those children, but it's still not spreading your own anti-Blackness and internalized racism onto your children, who you don't know what they're going to experience and face in this world. And especially as a Black person, if you just... So for me, like, as I'm navigating this with my children in this young age, I'm already trying to give them the resources and the strength to stand on, to be out in this world. And it's my hope that I'm doing a good job. I mean, I'm trying to make sure that I'm paying attention to the cues that they give me. And like I said, like, so my kid come home and say, I want straight hair, or I want this or want that. And I start showing him more people of beauty, of color, with like curly hair, with kinky hair, with, you know, all of these things that make a difference for our children to feel like I too am normal and accepted, right? I think as, you know, as they grow up in their family, in this family, part of your, I guess, job as a person of color is to make the rest of your family understand like advocacy and allyship, because a lot of times they don't. I know, like, my family here is so loving and caring, but I know that they don't always understand the underlying impacts of some of the things that happen in this society, because they've not had to experience it and or think about it. And some of the conversations I have with them, people don't want to have, but they're necessary, especially if you are going to be in a family where, I mean, here in Italy, it's like he doesn't get exposed to, you know, my people, my family, my friends very often, you know, through phone calls and everything like that, but it's not necessarily the same. So those other family members have to be aware and be allies, be advocates for those children. And it makes a difference, because they need to see that, especially if you're going to be raising them around primarily people who have no fucking clue. And you end up taking on those roles as someone of color to teach them, to explain to them, like, no, these things are not acceptable, or explaining to them the experience like that you even have. And I think a lot of times people of color and they get in these relationships and they don't want to recognize it, or they sought out these relationships in an effort to forget something about themselves. And for me, that wasn't the case. Like, I have never sought out relationships because with someone based on their ethnicity. So their father is there. I don't need to. So I have always been of the thing, I am always me. And being me is inclusive of my ethnicity and my experiences in this world because of being a woman of color, a Black woman. So, guys, I am working through some of these things. I am, at the same time learning from my children what they need, because that makes a huge difference. I have my perspectives on things, but I'm also like, what do they need in this world, and trying to make sure I support them. So, we do affirmations, we do all kinds of like reading and exposure and looking at things from a different perspective. And even though they're little, I just try to be like, I try to talk to them about different experiences, different types of way to live, even if it's inclusive of, gender or whatever, like, because here is all kinds of things. One of the things that I am very attentive of is indoctrination, right? So in Italy, like in the schools and things like that, like they still do religion, Catholicism. We're not doing that because, and I'm not Christian. So for me, like all of that is part of indoctrinating people into white supremacy. And I'm not participating in that. And even though it puts them on the outside of some activities, it helps for me to know that these indoctrinations are not being implanted in them at a young age. And I have to pay attention more to like these kind of details in their life. I can't just be like, yeah, do it because everybody else is doing it. No, I really have to make sure that I understand the things that are going on. And I'm already preparing myself for their miseducation of history and everything at school that I am going to be having to correct, because it's the same thing that they do in the United States, where they don't tell the real history of things. And it has affected how children think about the continent of Africa, how they think about other people of color, and what that makes for them. So like all of these things, all of these details, all of these extra things that you have to pay attention to, I think because I don't want to say the word isolated, but kind of like on your own. You're definitely on your own in certain ways. And when your partner really doesn't know, not just because they're white, but because they're of a different culture, because they are completely have no point of reference for these kind of things, the burden is on the person of color. And I think a lot of people don't want that burden, especially even when they are in those relationships and they let their children just float out there and have identity crisis, and basically because they have their own identity crisis in respect to their own ethnicity and why they ended up in a relationship that is multicultural or interracial or whatever you want to call it, because some people aren't honest about that either. So guys, love to talk to you some more in the comments. Meet me in the comments. Let's have this chat. Subscribe to my channel, and ciao for now.